All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center. My name is Quentin Ring. I am Beyond Baroque's Executive Director. I am absolutely delighted to welcome you here tonight, and particularly to welcome you to a reading and artist roundtable centered on our current exhibition, 7x7 LA Selected Writer and Artist Collaborations. We have two of those writers here with us tonight from those collaborations, Ashaki M. Jackson and Jasper Nighthawk. And we have two of the visual artists as well, Ned Evans and Corinne Shakes. We'll talk a bit more about them in just a minute. But first I wanted to say a few words about Beyond Baroque. I'd like to begin by acknowledging Beyond Baroque's presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples. We acknowledge the wrong done to these peoples through settler colonialism, genocidal practices, and the violent dispossession of their land. And as an arts organization, we are committed to uplifting Indigenous writers and communities. So about Beyond Baroque, we are a space, a set of interlocking programs, and a community of people dedicated to exploring the artistic possibilities of language. And to using language to its fullest imaginative potential and to thinking about it in all its dimensions. We're a space for poets, for writers, for artists. We have writing workshops, readings and performances, art exhibits, and a great deal more. And we've been doing that for 54 years, since 1968, in fact. We are Los Angeles' oldest literary institution. Yes. The past couple of those have been, among the most difficult of those 54 years. But we are definitely going to keep on doing all of that for a good deal while longer. And I did want to call attention to a few of our upcoming programs for you. Next Friday, we have Nikki Beer and LA's poet laureate Lynn Thompson reading here, right here in this theater. On April 30th, we have the inaugural International Poetry Film Festival. That's with over 40 films from 12 countries, all poetry-based films. We're really excited about that. Next month, we have the book launch of Allison Hedge Koch's new book. And we have a reading, a zine fest, and a punk show celebrating James Spooner's new graphic memoir, High Desert. We also have a good number of workshops online. Currently, we have our free weekly Wednesday night poetry workshop that's been running continuously since 1969. Every Wednesday. We also have our Monday night fiction workshop every Monday online. And then in person, we have a workshop on poetry and performance with Mary Lou Newmark next month, and another one with Tracy Kato Kiriyama. Both of those are poetry workshops. We're really excited about them. You can check out all that information on our website, beyondbaroque.org. We really hope you'll come back for some of these programs. In order to continue the work that we do, we are in need, generally speaking, of the support of our community. I really ask those of you who are not members to consider becoming a member of Beyond Baroque this evening. It starts as little as $50 for an individual membership, $75 is a dual membership. We have levels well above that. It allows us, at the moment, we're keeping all of our programming free. We'd like to continue to do so. It helps us keep that free. Even if we have to charge for certain events, it'll get you into most of those events for free. You get a discount in the bookstore, you get a choice of premiums. So please do see Jade in the bookstore about becoming a member if you're so inclined. We really appreciate it. About tonight, as I mentioned, this event is held in tandem with the exhibit in our Mike Kelly Gallery, which itself is drawn from the online magazine 7x7.la, which features collaborations between writers and artists. This is a project that's very near and dear to our spirit, our ethos. We're not only a literary center, but we exist in part to encourage collaborations between visual artists and between writers, with writers. And so I've just been really, really thrilled about this exhibit. We have, two sets of collaborators here, as I mentioned. Ashaki Jackson and Ned Evans collaborated on Here and Here, and Jasper Nighthawk and Corinne Shakes collaborated on Sodium Light. So this program, the way this program is going to go, we're going to have both Ashaki and Jasper read. While they're reading, we'll project Ned and Corinne's work on the screen up here. After the readings, we're going to have a little bit of a writers and artists roundtable. We'll have everyone up here to just talk about the nature of their collaborations. But before I formally introduce our writers and artists, I wanted first to give a huge thanks to our staff here tonight. We have Jimmy Vega, our assistant director. We have Von Salinas, our programs coordinator, Dan McNay in the booth, as well as our programs and publications intern, Jade, who's in the bookstore, and our publicity intern, Megan Leahy, who's here in the audience as well. A huge thank you to all of you for all the work you've done, put into this program. But above all, I wanted to thank the curator of the show and of 7x7 LA, Axel Wilhite. He's just done an amazing job with the show. And I wanted to invite him up here to say a few words about the show. He can, articulate it far better than I can. So please welcome Axel Wilhite to say a few words, and then we'll get started.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Quentin. This show kind of, we started talking about doing this 2 years ago, and then the pandemic happened. So, I mean, it feels like a miracle to see everything come together, after all of that time, and so beautifully. 7x7 started as things do on the back of a napkin. This napkin was at Lemonade down the street. My writer friend and I were sitting there over lunch trying to develop a zine project we could work on together. And there we came up with this idea for 7x7. You probably have a sense of how it works, or will soon. Maybe you don't. I tried to explain it to some of you upstairs, and I feel like I flubbed it. But essentially, it's a game played by one writer and one artist, and they take turns advancing a story or a crown of poems in their creative discipline with words or image. The participants can't discuss or steer the game while they're playing, but they can move the collaboration forward in real-time play with their pieces. And the collaboration quickly takes a life of its own. And I don't know, it never fails to kind of swerve into wild, kind of uncharted territory. So we invented this thing, and our first impulse was to share it with all of our friends. And then soon after that, we began conceiving of like a digital home for these exchanges. And that's how this magazine project was born. Since the launch of 7x7 LA in 2015, we've published over 160 original collaborations. Every one of them is surprising, original, and full of play, which is my absolutely favorite quality in art. Another extraordinary thing about these exchanges is the way that they build friendship and generate community. It's surprising that so many of our participants have gone on to form lasting creative partnerships, book length, collaborations and other kinds of, zines and things. And I just love the way that playful spirit of 7x7 is so infectious for people in this way. Being involved with this magazine has been a real pleasure these last 7 years. And it's wonderful to finally meet some of the artists and writers that I worked with so many years ago, and to see them read tonight. I want to thank Quentin Ring and the staff of Beyond Baroque for this opportunity to share and celebrate the project with you, and to celebrate its amazing, talented writers and artists and its community. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Axel. Very much appreciate that. So let's get to the reading portion of the program. First up, we are going to hear from Ashaki Jackson and also be able to see Ned Evans' work as she reads. Just to tell you a little bit both about them, their collaboration, as I mentioned before, is called Here and Here. To tell you a little bit about Ned Evans, born in Burbank, California in 1950 with an MFA from UC Irvine in 1974. Ned Evans has lived in Venice, California since the early 1970s, working primarily in painting, in acrylic and mixed media on canvas. He has also spent years exploring photography, collage, and mixed media sculpture reliefs. He has shown throughout the United States and Europe. Shaki M. Jackson, meanwhile, PhD, is a social psychologist, program evaluator, and poet. She has worked with youth moving through the juvenile justice system through research, evaluation, and creative arts mentoring for 1 decade. Her work has appeared in Cura, a literary magazine of art and auction, Pluck, Journal of Afro-Latin Arts and Culture, and Prairie Schooner, amongst other journals and anthologies. Writ Large published her chapbook Surveillance in March 2016. We have that for sale, by the way, in the bookstore, so please do check that out. And a second chapbook, Language Lesson, was published by Miel in August 2016. Jackson is also an executive editor and now publisher at the Offing online magazine and co-founder of Women Who Submit, a community that supports women in submitting their literary work to top-tier journals. She earned her MFA in poetry from Antioch University, Los Angeles, and her doctorate in social psychology from Claremont Graduate University. She lives in Los Angeles. She's also one of the city's best poets. So please welcome Ashaki Jackson.
It's a very generous introduction. I appreciate that. This evening, I will be reading from the 7x7 collection made for the occasion. But if you all are interested in the work that Ned and I collaborated on, there are still small chaps upstairs in the Mike Kelly Gallery. So during 2016, Surveillance came out, and it was really an investigation or a confrontation of how we watch Black people in videos of police brutality. And so that was on my mind when I was invited to work with Ned on the 7x7 collection. So I expanded the idea and went back to earlier surveillance of Black bodies. And I will start with the first poem, Manhattan, 1713. No slaves over the age of 14 could be out at night without a lantern by which they could be plainly seen. How does one exist? Always in violent illumination. The light flooding, bright maw. Night is blacker and shifting uncontrolled. What must the Black body look like, glowing at dusk? Always foreign, haloed, warning others of its coming. Oversight. Light to your shimmering black, lantern to chin, chattel, your glint and focused quiet, your poor person's pride, well-lit niggerness, floating, a firefly's wonder. Your haunt humble, an unsaved shadow, big as a new moon. Brooklyn, 2014, omnipresence. Floodlights loom over the projects, humming on watch like sentinels. In this open-ended morning, the Black body always moves toward heaven, bound. No one mistakes its slipping between drawn curtains as safety. Pause, just pause.
She did this poem and inspired the next song.
I love the investment. I think we're okay. No worries, no worries. I love the pause. We're all family here. Just having a casual conversation, which I love. But let me just say this. So the pieces that you see, and we'll talk about this hopefully during our conversation, all refer to light as part of the system of surveillance. And if you look at Ned's work, he's always playing with light as a frame or as something that slices through or as being investigated in his work. So we will talk about our kismet, our surprise kismet during our conversation. But in these first few poems, when I'm exploring kind of this idea of lantern laws, which were used for Black people, like we couldn't walk at dusk without a lantern because we were too dark and we looked ominous. Like it was a really lovely compliment for Ned to kind of examine the ways that shadow makes things look frightening or brings question to our comprehension. So I'm going to move back to Brooklyn, 2014, Omnipresence. Floodlights loom over the projects, humming on watch like sentinels. In this open-ended morning, the Black body always moves toward heaven, bound. No one mistakes its slipping between drawn curtains as safety. The constant whirring of generators, locust, death rattle, surveillance. Hear them always buzzing into bone. Officers lean into their confidence. Each evening, the lights surrogates, observing and pushing through privacy, shining on all inches of suspicion. Amplification. You and your broad nose are of interest. In the furious shine, you cast shadows. At all times of day, you fit several descriptions. What is light but an accomplice? Manhattan, 1722. Black funerals had to be held during daylight. Look, the body adapts, is even buried in the sun's brightest moments. What can be done to a body that sleeps and prays in the perpetual daybeams, seeping into its casket? Look. What can be done with a body watched from all angles for signs of danger and magic? Without the death's sunset, the body is eternal as the humming sun. Yes, and brighter still. Ned is killing it. Manhattan, 1742. Every household was required to keep watch for suspicious nighttime behavior of slaves. Even evening, the body is studied. Its shadows watched naturally as if changing seasons. Long nights are more sport than rest. Look at the dark and its supple shapes. Isn't the moon ripe, steely as an iron bit, vigilant as the community, armed and encouraged? and our last correspondence. Ned had to tell me because I kept writing. He was like, can you calm down? Wear black. Opening the day. In the crevices of father's hardworking palms. A quiet outline between water and land. Grandmother's womb in the soil that holds her firstborn child. Suspending each dead star in time. Just ahead, running. Behind the double-sided tongue. Watching quietly from the trees as we ruin each other. Here and here and here. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Ashaki Jackson and Ned Evans. Thank you both. Really wonderful. For our next collaboration, we have Jasper Nighthawk and Corinne Shakes. Just to tell you a little bit about them. Corinne Shakes is an artist who lives and works in Venice, California. She was born in Paris, France, where she studied fine arts and computer science. Her love for storytelling and French writer Jules Verne infuses Shakes' body of work, drawings, paintings, and installations. Shakes' work has been featured in many gallery exhibitions and is included in prestigious private collections worldwide. Jasper Nighthawk is a writer, teacher, and designer. His writing has appeared in Joyland, Juked, 7x7 LA, Lunch Tickets, and Your Impossible Voice. It also appears in Light Play, his free email newsletter. He works as the university storyteller of Antioch University. He has an AB from Harvard College and an MFA in creative writing from Antioch, Los Angeles. He lives in Los Angeles and on the Mendocino coast with his partner and their cat. I'm really delighted to have discovered Jasper's work through this collaboration. And so, just really thrilled to have you read. So please welcome Jasper Nighthawk.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Quentin, and it's an honor to be here and to follow up the amazing Ashaki and Ned Evans. Doing this collaboration with Corinne was an amazing experience, and part of what was notable of that experience was that it was mediated by the computer. We were sending these things to each other often like late at night, having worked far beyond the 2 hours that we were supposed to spend on the collaboration. And seeing them on a screen, especially as you'll see the images that Corinne produced, had this quality of falling into that I think you'll experience here, projected light. But it's been wonderful with this show to see Corinne's images and all of the other 7x7 artists in a tangible way, which I feel like after these several years of being separate because of this virus, just is unexpectedly moving. So thank you to everyone who put this show together. Corinne and I decided to title our piece Sodium Light. It is more of a prose work, so it's a little bit longer, but I think with the images, you'll stay with it. Also, I altered the text just slightly, so don't be tripped up if you're reading along. Whistling wind, that's what I hear coming to. Horribly cold, I'm past shivering, on my back. The sky enamel blue cut with black lines, power lines, poles, big ribbed transformers, wind whining through the lines. I know where I am, the transformer garden on the edge of town, trapped with the giant electricity machines, surrounded by chain link topped with tricourse barbed wire. This is where the buzz comes from, the buzz that gave the shop teacher brain cancer. But all I can hear is the whine. I'm Titch, fuck this. I sit up and shove clumsy to my feet. My arm hairs stand on end. This place is spooky. I rush out as fast as I can. The main gate is padlocked, and a lap around the perimeter tells me there are no obvious breaks in the fence. I climb 3/4 up the chain link, king rat moves. But then I grab some barbed wire by the barb. Bleeding, cold, I clink back down, suck on my palm. Who put me in this cage? I'm going hypothermic in my t-shirt. Night falls quick, fog rolls in. A clunk, and the buzz is immediately there, spinning up and up to its 3-part madness. I feel it in my skull, a throb behind my eyes and a twitch in my tail. Streetlights and garage motion trip lights all snap on. Windows fill with TV flicker and the sky goes putrid orange. I want to be back at Mount Eleanor Elementary, pushing my wheelie garbage can and mop. Now I find a hole in the fence. Through it, everything's wrong. Rippled light like a heat mirage. Occasionally, a spark arcs across the gap. The ground over there is wrong too. Cobblestones, queer shapes. My rat self says, time to go. I feel a warm breeze coming through the hole. I plunge head first. For the longest time, I'm suspended in thick, crackling air, electricity. Sometimes it pools and you've got to call the electrician to fix it. Last year in the back stall of the girls' bathroom at Mount Eleanor, I got to watch Ralph work. He stogged his big rough hands into welding mitts and told me about the way electricity can break free and set up an electrolysis, eating metal away. Electric rot, he called it. It took a whole morning for him to clean it up. The superintendent of schools came down later and he made us promise not to tell anyone about the accident with Larissa. I have plenty of time to think about this as I fall, plenty of time to look around. I'm slowly passing towards the cobblestone world, which seems like it's actually the top of a tower. There's a woman crouched against a toothy wall, smoking a cigarette. She looks familiar. I slip free and land on my feet. The air smells like ozone. Titch? Hey, Miranda, I say. Shit. Her voice is ragged. I didn't think it would be you. I don't know, Brad maybe? Never you. Her pants are ripped at the knee. Her long blonde hair is a frizzy heap. What are you doing here? I say. She throws a ball of something at my face, but I get my arm up in time. Lightning rattlesnakes up my bicep and explodes in 1,000 needles on my shoulder. You're never gonna get us out, she says. Oh, fuck, Titch, fucking Titch is the one who comes. I leave her, hugging her knees, eyes pressed shut. I know that look, that slipping of time back into warm 8th grade prom. I have no such place to go. Up in the sky, jagged webs of electricity take the place of stars. I walk down dark stone stairs, straight into a vast pool. Warm, viscous water up to my calves, darkly purple. I try to step back onto dry stone and my feet slide out from under me. My ass speeds down, tailbone hits hard, and then I'm underwater. There's an impish voice in my head saying, like, you know who put you here? Laura Icona did. The name rings my skull till I remember what it was that got me in that transformer cage. Ms. Icona was my teacher for 3 years of remedial English. She just about fixed my grammar up by the time I graduated, mainly because I was in love. Everyone except her called me Titch. Titch the itch, Titch the snitch, Titch the bitch. I heard it all and I hated it. Ms. Icona, she read my name off the roll sheet, Bruce. She helped me fill out college applications, the FAFSA. A nearby state school accepted me. But then mom got blood sick, so I stuck around and took the job as a janitor at the elementary school, Too embarrassed to tell Ms. Icona I never ended up going to college at all. I avoided her. When mom died, I started selling. Never took the stuff. There was something funny about watching the cool kids from middle school waste away. They came to me first imperious, but by the end, they were on their knees. There was something funny about cutting them off, too. The whining through the door was so sweet. Dumb little Titch with his pocked cheeks, pushing his rolling trash can around Mount Eleanor. Dumb little Titch, remade as God, slamming that door like I was cutting the first slice of cake at my wedding. 2 hands on the knife, both mine. My world split in half, and I walked through the crack. Titch the witch in an electric prison. Memorize every face you meet. Practice faces in the mirror. Practice kissing your thumb and forefinger at night after the lights are out. Never step on a crack. Remember her face, brown hair, broad shoulders, the way she reflexively touched her eyebrow piercing. Remember and then dismember, clearing a way for the new, for the future. You think you killed her cold. What a joke. That voice in my head is scratching something, some jagged edge of unresolved past, something that doesn't add up. It isn't immediately obvious what. I remember the damn murder clearer than anything. It plays on its own in my head, like a film, like watching myself. I woke up a machine, my barricaded apartment with everything mopped clean. I ate instant oatmeal with cold water, like a machine. Pant cuffs rolled. I walked out the door. I drove across town at the speed limit like a machine. It was evening. I rang her front doorbell. I waited and then rang again. She opened the door an inch. The door chain was attached. I threw my shoulder into the door again and again, and it tore wide open the 3rd time. No one can bear remembering this. I choked her like an angry, broken human. When I ran out of her apartment, I closed the door behind me. No, actually, I left it open so someone could find her sooner. Almost like remorse. No, I called 911 from her cell phone and then left it on the table and ran through the door, praying they might resuscitate her. No, I stayed on the line and confessed everything and promised I was unarmed and begged they come quick. No. Finally, I remember the real ending. I repented the moment she was dead. I gave her CPR right then. I called 911 and kept giving her CPR, as close as I could remember to my training. We were alone for long minutes, me breathing for her. The medics did everything they could. They shocked her again and again with the defibrillator, the electricity. I sob, but can't cry underwater. I don't know how I'm not drowning. Her blood forms into nebulae, glowing in the gloom. I gather my arms and swim up and up and up. When I break the surface, I see red clouds massing over choppy waves. In the distance, a rocky shore, a tower. I reach the shore. There's a sort of breakwater, haphazardly built of giant stones. A swell surges up and I grab a lip of rock, pull myself over onto a narrow shelf. My body is numb, leaden, exhausted. My clothes drip in rivulets. I lay on my side and cough up brackish water. The wind is hot on my face and smells of ash. When I look up, wishing sleep, the sky gloams from salmon and gray to neon orange and pink. The waves play white around the rocks. My eyelids feel puffy, pushing more and more shut. I am so tired. Over the shushing surf, a tiny voice says, "I know you." I recoil at the sound, jerking my head up. My temple rams a point of stone and rages. "You're the janitor man. I saw you when you fell." I saw you when I fell. Between sharp throbs, I look up and pick out the girl sticking her head between 2 rocks above me. She has short bangs and a pointy chin. I say, who are you? I'm Larissa. I've been here 4 months. How about you? How long have you been here? She's smiling. You know, no one's ever done it. No one's ever gotten free of this place. We climb over endless boulders towards the tower. My clothes dry quickly, then I sweat. The sky is a blinding overcast white. Larissa scrambles faster than me and shouts back questions. What's your plan for getting us out? Hey, mister, did you know my mom, Cheyenne? Do you want to play the wiffle waffle game? It's a fun balance game. I don't answer, but study the tower, tall and whitewashed, with mildew stains trailing from deep-set windows. I'm praying the portal is still open at the top. Larissa says, I know you killed that woman. I bet you don't know that she came through here. I think she really loved you. My eyes ache from the bright sky. Goddamn kids. She keeps rambling. Laura told me there was another tower if you walked long enough, and maybe even a tower city. She told me stories about the tower city, about how there were people from all over the real world there. Sometimes there was even food. I think she was my friend. You know why I'm named Larissa? It's because mom thought it sounded pretty. Larissa, do you think it's pretty? I can't tell if she's talking to me or herself, but her little raspy voice fills the stairway with echoes. Probably not. You probably don't care at all. If you don't answer me, I'm not going to tell you about my rock hideout. Okay, you don't care. Anyways, what's your name, mister? I'm Titch, I say. We both get quiet. The stairs are dark and slick and smell of mold, except where windows let in air and light. I'm slower than the girl. She says, at the top, there's a lady with all the cigarettes. Did you know? She's mean. I think she's really sad. I stole a pack of her cigarettes back when I was bored. Then I smoked one and they were so gross. I gave them back and she got mad. She hit me in the stomach, but it wasn't as hard as she could. She had so many boxes. I didn't know it was bad to take some. You know, I just can't figure out how she got so many boxes of cigarettes. A voice echoes down, muddy and distant. I was coming out of the cigarettes for less when I fell in. Larissa puts on an old-timey voice and says, you heard it here first, folks. For my job at Mount Eleanor, I already know how weird kids this age are. Tell me about Laura, I say. I thought you'd never ask, she says, giggling. Well, let's see. Laura coming here was the best thing that happened. Before, I was so alone, I had to talk with rocks. It was even worse than school. With Laura, though, we talk all the time. She told me how she got here, but mainly she talked about life, like good things, food, you know. She talked about you. We talked about the Tower City. We take walks. Where did she go? I ask. Laura's face haunts me through the dark stairwell. I don't know, she says. Hey, maybe we'll go on an adventure and find her, Mr. Titch. The voice calls down again, close now. Aw, Christ, Titch again? You know her, says Larissa. That's Miranda, I say. We knew each other when we were your age. She beat you up, she says, pleased. I can tell. Then we're back on top of the tower, only now it's bright with sunlight. Miranda looks much the same, propped in a shaded crook of wall, surrounded by cigarette cartons and a mound of butts. I look up but see only blue. You looking for the portal, says Miranda. It don't open till night. Larissa says, we know how the portal works, and stares hard at her. The two of us climb up a crenel and sit there, staring at the horizon, waiting for sunset. The clouds finally limn with orange and aquamarine. Miranda climbs up to watch with us. You guys aren't going to get out of here. But if you did, and you decided to come back, she says, maybe bring some nicotine gum for me. As the light fades, the sky fills with distant lightning, occluded by clouds. A thin, flickering glare illuminates the top of the tower. When I look up, I see thin crackles and broad arcs, And directly overhead, a circular mass composed of hundreds of jittery strands of electricity. The portal, I'm pretty sure. I'm in no rush, so I sit and watch. It's in the shape of a disc, thicker in the center. Beyond the random motion of the strands, it seems to be rotating slowly, clockwise. Occasionally, a string of stray electricity breaks off and drifts, irregular and slow, to the stone floor where it sits, jittering. Larissa says, "Titch, what are we doing?" "Getting the hell out," I say. "Climb on my back." "I'm not going first," she says. I glare at her and say, "Climb on my back already. We're going together, and I'm gonna hold onto your legs. I can't really stand on your shoulders, kid, so this is gonna have to work, okay?" She looks me in the eye and says, "You better be telling the truth." When she climbs up me, her knees feel warm against my shoulders. I straighten up, and a moment later, her weight is off me, and she's out of my reach, deep in the ball of lightning, screaming. "Miranda, get over here," I yell. "We have to save Larissa." "Fuck, you fucking idiot," she snarls at me, but she does get up. "We have to get her, pull her back," I say. The screams are louder and louder, horrible. "Can I climb on your shoulders?" "You idiot, Titch. No, you can't. You're too heavy." I look at her and say, "You're right. I'm an idiot." The screams are unbearable. Miranda says, "Kneel down, idiot. I'm climbing on your shoulders. You'd better hold on to my leg, though." I kneel, and she's heavier, but it sort of works. I hold her leg as I straighten up. She grabs Larissa. Then we are all convulsing with electric shocks, endless racks of current, muscles cramping stiff, jolts twitching, smell of burning hair, eyes blinding white. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Jasper and Kareen and Sodium Lights. Thank you. Absolutely love that. So now we're going to have a little bit of a roundtable discussion with Jasper and Kareen and Ashaki and Ned. To moderate that, we have Axel as well as Lisa Bocasio, who's here, another 7x7 contributor. So I'd like to invite all the artists and moderators just to come up and join us at the seats up here. And I think I'll just go ahead and turn it over to Axel once everybody gets started, settled. So if you have questions, I think there'll be space for a Q&A at the end after sort of the moderated talk. So Axel, if you want to go ahead and take it away, I think we're good.
Can everyone hear me? Yes. So I thought that it would be interesting to hear kind of the artists and writers describe their own experience, you know, since that I think that this is kind of a rare opportunity in arts to kind of like make improvise together and create this, you know, these stories, these illustrated stories. I think usually either the writing takes precedence or the art takes precedence in a collaboration, and here it's really a kind of a free-flowing and sort of equal relationship. I mean, no one really controls the direction or the shape of the collaboration. So I think that it would be interesting to hear how the artists and writers of these two particular stories made the challenge of this game, and yeah, I mean, I have here my my colleague Lisa Locascio, who for a number of years helped edit the magazine with me. She's a novelist and editor, and also an educator. And I thought, since she was in town, that it would be great to have her speak with me and pose some questions. So
Thanks, Axel. Yeah, I think I mean, Axel had a great question, sort of this question about your creative practice and what the experience of the collaboration was like and how it might have impacted that practice.
But does anyone wanna?
Directed at who?
So, I mean,
When did we do this? It was 2016?
yeah. it was a
That's
few
why
years
I
ago.
forgot the process.
Yeah.
I forgot. You started. We decided that you would start. And I saw the images. I said, wait a minute. I thought we did it all at once. I thought you gave me 7 stories and I responded to 7 stories. So I apologize for that. And it makes much better sense the way it actually happened.
So
Anyway.
yeah, the way that it works is that over the course of 14 days,
Yeah, there was a time limit too.
there's a time limit.
Oh, my God.
It was a long time ago.
We're all jogging Ned's memory here.
Only 6 years ago.
6 years ago, but
Has anything happened in the meantime?
over the course of 14 days, the artist and the writer switch off. So
But we
Ashaki
got
in
to decide
Ned's
who
case,
started,
you
right?
guys decided who started, and so
I didn't know
Ashaki
what to
started.
do. I needed a prompt.
Right. And every other day, the other contributor, the other collaborator
Okay, now.
offers their
That's why I
response, their interpretation.
Yeah, I feel like I could take a crack at answering that
Yeah,
question.
please.
So earlier when we were like walking around the gallery, one of Corinne's friends asked me and said, do you feel like Corinne, and I apologize if you're in the audience, but said, do you feel like Corinne captured like your writing, what you'd written there? And I was like, I thought about it and I was like, that just doesn't feel like the right question.
No.
Because it wasn't, it was this intense kind of alchemy where I took the first stab in our
Stab
thing.
is a good.
Yeah.
word.
So, but once I had finished that first passage and sent it by email to Corinne, it was out of my control, and it was kind of this amazing feeling of like, I have no idea what
It's
is
a
going to
game.
come back.
It's a game.
Yeah.
And, we are all trying to come to my word. Come to my word.
It's a game. It
It's
also
not an
feels
illustration really.
it also feels kind of like dancing, where it's like you want to follow the person where they're leaving space for you to go, but also make space for where they wanted you to go.
You knew where you were going.
I had no idea.
Was that challenging for you to like feel like you didn't have kind of creative control, or was it like was that a fun aspect of it, of like,
Oh, I think it's the fun part
yeah.
for me, because I felt totally out of my element. I said, okay. And the prompt and then the way she structured it visually as well as phonetically kind of got me excited and challenged at the same time, and trying to respond to these things that I know very little about and trying to be honest at what I do. So it was sort of the thing about collaboration. I've done a lot of it in a bunch of different mediums, is that once you set the parameter, and in this case, it's a tight parameter, but then you're free. You don't have to compete. You don't have to do this, but maybe you can push or tug each other. But it's just because you have those parameters, you just move forward and you forget all that stuff about individual this or that. It's sort of magic when it goes well.
Ned said something really comforting. This is the first time we are seeing or
Yeah, we've
meeting
never
each
met.
other. Have never met. He walked in this evening and he was standing here and I reached over and I was like, I'm Ashaki. Because in my mind, I have gone through an experience with someone that, depending on how close you were to the events that have been happening around Mike Brown or Tamir Rice, like everything is very sensitive and you don't know who you can trust to have conversations about it. My first idea was to go back to older topics, older themes that I used to write about, which was loss and grief. I know these things. I'm a sad girl. But I said, what if I try to expand what I was working on and kind of look deeper into, honestly, race and perception? Like, these are two things that I don't know much about. I'm still interested in. And I wonder if this artist who I've never met, I've only seen a website, would be willing to rock with me just for a little bit so that even I get a better understanding of what's happening. So when Ned says, these are things that I, didn't know much about, it makes me feel safer or more comforted in knowing that we were on a journey of exploration together, and that his response wasn't, I don't want to talk about this. Everybody is talking about this. I am tired of
Yeah, but it
it.
was 6 years ago and people weren't talking about it the way they are today.
Right, there's
It
been a
wasn't
buildup.
it wasn't on everybody's head and in everybody's face, right?
Right,
Isn't that crazy?
it's what, well,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
been,
it's-
it's coming, it's here.
Yeah.
But when I gave that to you, I was like, can I trust you with this? Are you gonna be okay with this? Am I burning a bridge before I've even made it? And as you saw on that screen, Ned was down. He was
Yeah.
about it.
I
He
did
was
the
about
peanut, I
that
did the
life.
peanut man.
He was so
The
good
ultimate
at it.
humiliation of humanity, right?
Yes. Like, he received, he saw the prompt and he responded to whatever I gave. And then my response was to build on that. And then he reflected back and gave more. So it wasn't necessarily a game feeling for me. I'm navigating fear, I'm navigating trust. And all Ned does is just show me what I'm thinking. It was an incredible process. Did I say thank you? Because I meant to say thank you.
Well, at least you can put it into words.
2 hands, thank
I
you.
can't.
Well,
No, that's that's great.
I mean, it bears mentioning that in the editorial process around 7x7, as Axel said, there's over 160 of these. And so they cover almost every imaginable topic and every imaginable style, both in terms of the art and the writing. And we have had a lot of collaborations, to be frank, fail around issues of race, around issues of sexuality and class. And it's our responsibility as editors when things start to go sideways to really shut that down, because often there's a degree to which one writer or artist is being exposed to the failure of understanding by the collaborator. And that's really kind of the only basis upon which we would close a collaboration.
Well, it becomes a situation where there's not enough trust to
Yeah.
be creative with one another.
And it becomes contentious and toxic in a way that can,
Really? How many?
I mean, not that many.
Like a
but
handful, maybe.
Yeah,
Out of
less than
130?
10 out of 160.
Yeah.
But when it
Okay, so
happens,
5%, 3%.
yeah, it's, I mean, it's honestly more common that one person just gets really busy or just stops responding and then we have to repair someone. But this doesn't, I mean, for the most part, all of these are completed in good faith, but Ned and Ashaki's collaboration is really remarkable because they, to borrow the phrase from Donna Haraway, they stayed with the trouble, right? Like there wasn't a desire to escape. And there is a tug of war that takes place between collaborators, but sometimes you see that turning into like a real power struggle instead of a generative power struggle. And we've definitely seen some ones that are like kind of funny, where one person wants to write about like dragons and the other person is making art about, capitalism, and they're not meeting in the middle. But
I think that plays in, I mean, I asked Axel, I said, well, you made this decision and I trusted him to put me with someone and her with someone that could possibly do it together.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of
And
what.
that's a reflection on you pairing people.
But I mean, I think that's the kind of at its core, the project is about trusting people, trusting people to be accountable to one another, and to just to stick with it and to explore together and stuff. And so
You mean talk is cheap?
Well, it's kind of, it is
Sometimes.
matchmaking, like there's a
No, I
little
mean
bit
with
of,
artists, everybody says they're gonna do the, the
yeah.
follow through.
Yeah.
It's chemistry and magic that we're looking for too, right? And it's one of the really comforting things about the project is that those elements actually, most of the time they do arise. Most of the time there is a chemistry and a magic, even though the two people has been mentioned, rarely know each other, rarely meet in person, often are quite different in many ways. But that tug of war is generative when things are working as they should.
I was very interested. I mean, having these two pieces be read like alongside each other. It's kind of inevitable that you do a little bit of comparison, but I think so many of the collaborations are more the art is more abstract, and I thought both of your collaboration was just such a successful pairing of abstraction with words and with poetry, and I felt like Corinne and my was these like very Corinne, your style is so designed, but is also can be more realist or have
Storytelling.
It's kind of like a graphic novel,
It is.
I felt.
No way.
But you have a background in
Yeah.
sort of comic books and graphic novels, yeah.
Hmm.
I think that your story like takes illustration to such an extreme. No, I mean, I think that we've had other collaborations in the past where like it'll be, the drawings will be illustrative in the sense that like they'll take a scene or a person, and try to like, illustrate them, and then, but it doesn't really give a lot for the writer to kind of move on with, it doesn't take an additional leap. And in your case, it was like you tried to include every single thing that happened in Jasper's text, and it kind of the ambition of these compositions and stuff.
It's like bombastic.
Yeah, they
Beautifully
actually
painted,
push
but-
the story in an interesting way, in a very novel way, I think.
Well, I tried to play with first. I tried to see who were the characters Jasper was creating, which was kind of confusing because he had this kind of time lapse, film noir story coming here, there, and so I thought, well, I'm going to get all the characters and I'm going to give them like portals we can go somewhere maybe, and so it's in a way I was illustrating with his characters, but I was also forming a new space with this kind of rope portals or whatever, where the story could go, and giving some little clues, like you see this kind of it's from Brittany, this lighthouse, or
A clue that I totally missed.
but he knew exactly. I tried. I just took my revenge at the end, but it was fantastic anyway too. But yeah.
So he didn't go for all of the clues that you put in.
No, and I mean, I think when I was writing, I too was trying to open a question at the end of each piece, or at the end of each installment, and be like, where will Corinne take this, and just like leave it open. Like I really didn't know where it was going to go.
But this was the real collaboration. He was driving okay, but I took all his character at the end to give another end. So it's the game.
Yeah.
And
Do you wanna talk about what your interpretation of what your ending
my
was?
ending is well, I like to be ambiguous, so you can
Okay.
have any kind of interpretation of the image, but basically it was like a zoom back camera, and Teach wakes up in in surgery,
Mhm.
huge big headache, and he's surrounded by the young Larissa, who is a nurse, Laura, who is his crying mom, and I mean, it's a drug-induced nightmare kind of in the hospital, and it had to be dark anyway because well, we both dark usually, but I'm dark underwater in a very quiet way, and obviously it's like things happen.
Yeah,
So,
But I feel like your ending is somewhat redemptive of the whole story because so it's funny, you guys talking about your collaboration and how like what you were writing about Oshaki has like only become more prominent in our discourse as a nation and just in many, especially like white people's minds of like, I need to be paying attention to this. And I will just disclose as myself, like reading this 6-year-old story or 5-year-old story that is, you know, the engine of the plot is like the murder of a woman and its center is like the kind of emotional experience of the man who committed this crime. Like that isn't a story that I would write today as a more mature writer. And just as somebody who like thinks about like the stories that we tell as framing what is worth looking at in our society. And so I really appreciate Corinne, like you almost unraveling that and making it the like interior psychosis of somebody as opposed to kind of a literal event.
well,
Like it feels
know,
kind of redemptive.
it just happened. We had one day, not one day, you had one day to give, to send your stuff. So you didn't have much time to react. And for me, it's,
I want to know, how did you do those beautiful paintings in a day and a half?
so he has the original email. So I think they were pretty good. I didn't sleep.
You didn't
You know,
sleep?
He sent.
I did. I feel so much better knowing that.
Wait a
Those
minute.
paintings are so intricate and complicated
Yeah,
and
yeah.
involved.
No,
And I
no,
said,
no.
how did
It's.
And
he
I
was-
forgot we had a time limit. I
So
forgot
we-
everything about
we
this
had a
whole
time
thing,
limit.
other than what she wrote.
And Jasper was always sending me email past midnight. And my husband can remember I was in bed with my computer. It's like, Jasper,
Oh my
I
God.
need your text.
So we have a guideline that says that the turn shouldn't take more than 2 hours
Okay.
to complete. But
Oh, that was part of it too. Oh,
I'm
okay.
a
But the
cheat.
idea
just the
was
idea of
being
it,
worked
but-
out on email, and
Yeah.
then we went back and refined it. I'm just trying to give you some extra space here. What I found interesting about the work when I first saw it, because I was still trying to figure out the characters in Jasper's work, was that it was in this globe, it was in this marble. So I was already transported to like, this is not a real space. Because in the first paragraph, he's falling like forever. I was like, oh, how do you kind of capture that? And where am I? Where am I located? And then you helped me to like drop the pen when you were like, here is a sphere in which things are happening. I'm like, okay, great, because I could not apply my logic. I could not apply my logic. But I just want to offer just this one thing that I noticed about the work, that it was so textured. There were so many pieces in the mind that it made me think that there were multiple dimensions happening at once. And that allowed me to get deeper into Jasper's story. So, you know, when you're giving clues and cues and all this whatnot, I actually saw time and space shifting in the image. I don't know if I was supposed to see it, or maybe I need my glasses. But I saw that, and that allowed me to also be more comfortable with Jasper's conversation with these people, these characters, who they were and what they were trying to do, and the lightning and the space and the darkness in the water. So it was a pairing, an appropriate pairing, where you all seemed symbiotic and really bringing the story together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think,
It's back to Axel.
yeah, I think it's right.
Whoever made the decision, did you, I mean, were you both conferring about how should we pair these? And
Yeah, I mean,
we've had some insight, although I will say for a long time, the way that 7x7 worked is that I produced a lot of the writers and Axel produced a lot of the artists. Not always, it didn't always break down that way.
Yeah, in the first couple of years, that was kind of how it was, how we did it.
Yeah.
Just because that's who we knew, you know.
Yeah, and there's a fair amount of mystery always, you know, like, because you don't, quickly, I wanted to not do sort of things that began to feel obvious to me, like pairing like a poet who was very imagist with like a very abstract artist, you know, like that. So, and or you don't want to pair someone whose work seems really like propulsive with someone who's making very like loud art, you know, you wanted to find a more subtle way to pair. And
Or just like a way to fuck with people. a little
yeah,
bit.
it's supposed to be challenging. There's supposed to be some kind of mystery there.
But I have a question, because when we do this thing, we have to sort of step out of what we do and what people know us for. I mean, I've been here a long time, but did you find that people wanted to just regenerate what they're known for and done? Or did they actually step up and just go, okay, I'm just going to respond in any kind? I mean, in my case, I set parameters for myself and then responded to her words, but it wasn't necessarily.
I think that the framework of the collaboration is so kind of like strict and alien to a lot of people that they had to develop a new way of working,
Oh, good.
you know.
That's good to hear. Because a lot of times that won't happen.
Yeah, well, I'm curious to know if like you had to work in a different way for these.
No,
pieces?
when you proposed it, I've always done collages all my life. And I said, I've got this little cache of images and a drawer full of these cards and this. I'm going to just use this little box full of my stuff that I've collected over 50 years to respond to this and then add and twist. So I set parameters myself, and whatever you threw at me, I was fine. I had my box full of stuff and images and things I could grab and take. And then I was painting a certain way and I put a little bit of that in.
Yeah.
So I love it because it's just sort of, okay, stand up and go. And don't think too much about it, just respond. I mean, I would pick up on what your headings from the newspapers. And then I would find a little phrase or something within your words and kind of bounce those around in my head. That's all I did.
It sounds like we had respective boxes.
Yeah.
So you had your box to
Yeah,
collage,
everybody has a box.
and I had my
Yeah.
box of laws,
Yeah.
weird laws from way back when. I'm just like, picked it up and I'm like, okay, this has to do with light. This is gonna fit. Where are we going?
Yeah.
So I guess we did have, in a sense, parameters for ourselves.
I think the way that Ned and then Ashaki both just described their process is a really beautiful way of thinking about creative processes in general. And I guess sort of a broad statement I would make about these collaborations is that I think the collaborations that we consider most successful are the ones where people have really engaged with the spontaneity and the of the moment responsiveness of it. So to kind of answer your question, Ned, you know, I think most people have engaged in good faith, but you see writers and artists who are more willing to kind of like go with the flow of what's being suggested in their partner's work. And there are also, you know, people who might come in with like more of like a set idea of like, I'm going to make these 7 drawings of flowers or whatever. And that's not bad, but it is sort of
That doesn't seem in the spirit of the thing.
No. Well,
No,
because it's not acknowledging the other person.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
or
I mean, I
it's-
think it's really interesting that like Karine and I ended up fashioning this sort of continuous narrative that had a lot of named characters who had faces attached to them. I mean, like it was like it encouraged like our most filmic aspects of our writerly and painterly selves, I think.
I think we did exactly the same, yeah.
But then you guys, your collaboration, you riffed on each other in a totally different way.
Yeah, it was sort of like a throwdown. A little bit. Right.
Yeah, I think I could work on your movie. It's a bit the way I felt, and I tried to, like a director of photography, or try to set the stage, and also participate, of course, to the narrative, because I had my idea of some portals and where we could go, but
Yeah, it might be worth disclosing that before we began our collaboration, I sent Corinne an email that said, if you had just like one word of where you want this to go, what would it be? And Corinne wrote back, portals. So that may have influenced the direction it went a little bit.
Oh.
We'll be let out in cuffs.
Did we do that?
No, we're still
No.
trying to figure out how to start.
Yeah.
We did a lot of back and forth. Do you want to start? Do you want to start? I think you want to start.
No, I demanded that you start. 'Cause I
There we
needed
go.
something to bounce off of,
Yeah.
because otherwise I was lost. Because I didn't, I
and
don't
we
know,
rolled
I have
the
to
dice.
respond to things.
It was very new for both
If it's
of us.
verbal,
Yeah.
because I struggle with verbal things. That's why I'm an artist, because I can barely read and do all that stuff. But being able to pick it out, that's back to the way you visually presented your stuff. I thought, oh, okay, I could do this. Because it's kind of, I'm dyslexic and I kind of read that way, where I bounce around.
Wow.
No, it's not something to be, whatever, it's just, it's the way you do it. And it's always been a struggle for me to read.
No, that's fascinating because you all saw this, I use white space instead of punctuation because
Yeah.
I talk it out loud
It's-
first.
they're
and then
like
it hits the
breaths.
page.
Yeah.
Lots of breath, lots of silence, lots of white space. And I wonder how that landed on people. And it's interesting to hear that that was part of your processing. It's helpful to know that,
Less words the better for me.
yeah. And I'm sparse. I'm
Yeah.
sparse with it.
So back to Axel, I think, and I don't know if you knew that. I don't know if you knew what you were gonna get from me, but you'd already read her.
No, I just trusted you
Yeah.
guys. I mean,
Okay.
and I think that you, yeah, I mean, if you approach the game like with kind of like honest sort of with earnestness or something, it just takes a life of its own, you know.
Yeah.
You don't really, it kind of drives itself. So and it was evident that it was working. So
Yeah.
It offers an opportunity for connection between writers and artists who might not in a more formal environment ever consider collaborating because of the distance between
Like
their
the
work.
two of us.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that could be said is true for almost all of the collaborators paired in the project. They might not have found each other. I wonder, do you feel that the aftermath of this project influenced or changed the direction of your work or your practice in any way?
Directed to me? No.
And any,
I do a million things. I'm constantly distracted and I just like to focus, get it done. And I'm already thinking a little bit about what's happening next. So it challenged me. So that's the part I liked about it, because I was sort of scared. Not scared, but you get kind of like, I know nothing about your world. And I'm not gonna pretend that I do. And I said, oh my God, I'll put Peanut Man on there. Started off as a very humiliating image, and I thought, oh, is that, and kind of, I sort of stood up and said, I'm gonna throw this out there and hope it doesn't fall flat. But it was a little, not frightening, it's just, I wasn't trying to challenge, it was just sort of like a little fish out of water. And
Yeah.
that's kind of a good thing at times.
well, you have to be vulnerable, you
Yeah.
know. You have to, I mean, these collaborations meet in an area where you're both made mutually vulnerable to one another,
Yeah.
and you have to kind of respect each other and try to see,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
see
really,
ahead together.
it's
So
very fulfilling when it's anxiety a little bit when you start, but once it starts to roll, it takes on a whole nother fulfillment and sort of life, and it's very gratifying.
And to Lisa's question, I wanted to offer that the work that I have written recently has been more in depth and a reflection on Ned and I's partnership. So the first work that I put out, Surveillance, was, very much about how we take in this media, this traumatic media, and then we use it to be judge and jury unnecessarily, which creates wounds that generally can't be fixed. It really lends to stereotyping and bigotry, but then moving into this idea of, hey, where did these perceptions come from? And digging into the history. So finding these laws from Manhattan, New York State, finding laws from Connecticut, and then trying to figure out the pieces that are in play that are both social and biological. Oh, I've gone down the rabbit hole. The work that I'm doing right now incorporates this because I never stopped reading this. Anytime I do a reading, I'm reading our 7x7 work.
Really?
Yes, yes, I am. I'm now looking at perception, like physical perception, the use of your eyes, and convergence, which is the way that our eyesight clears up as something approaches us. And when it doesn't clear up and it's all shadowy, it's called convergence failure. But we perceive that and we create perceptions based on the clarity of what we see. And that contributes to how we group things, what we say is safe, what we say is not safe, because we can see it in the light versus the dark. Because we can interpret it, because we can put pieces together. But if it's shadowy, if it's unclear, we usually say it's not safe and we try to avoid it. And then I'm trying to put blackness into that perception. I'm trying to figure out where blackness comes in when it approaches people and people's eyesight don't clear up. It looks distorted and people are afraid of that. So that's the manuscript that I'm working on now that is called Conversions. And I wouldn't have done that had I not gone back to these laws. And I'm like, why are these people making laws about us walking outside at night?
I have to tell this story about this exact thing. My neighbor who passed away many years ago, about 5-6 years ago, he was an old sort of cowboy, and I used to sit on his porch and he would play music and this, and he was a picker, antiques and this and that, and he put everything in the garage and let it rot. I helped his son after he passed away and the roof had rotted for 5 years, and we extracted all these paintings, this and that. And he also would sit on the porch and make little paintings on wood, and he would paint them. And he made this painting and it was called Moon Cricket. You know what a moon cricket is? The picture was 2 slaves with their shoes off at dusk, tiptoeing underneath these trees, and their eyes were the only bright thing because that's all you could see in the evening. And I had this painting, which I sort of inherited before you and I collaborated. And I said, whoa, I love this painting, but I can't show this to anybody. You know, I mean, I still have it, but it's so intense. And he was just of that world. I mean, he wasn't a blatant racist, this or that, but it was just the way things were for him.
That's the perception,
Right?
that in the dark, you can't see us.
So having that painting and actually really loving that painting because it's so intense and it's beautifully painted, a little piece of wood, just, and he would copy things and stuff. And Harold he was just the sweetest guy in the world. I said, oh my God, Harold painted this thing? This sweet, sweet man. But it was just, it sort of like reminds me of my father, where he grew up, you know, before the stock market crash in the 29. His family was well-to-do in Ohio and Pittsburgh, and they had a lot of servants and this and that. And so that perception continued when my grandmother moved to LA in 32. And growing up, she had a neighbor, Mrs. Walker, with kids, and I was instructed that I could play outside with her children, but not go over to her house. And I was like 7. And why I've remembered this is because it was so fucked up, my grandmother telling me that, but at the time I go, oh, okay, you know, you just do. But it's stayed with me and it's always bothered me. And I sort of was thinking about it driving over here, and it was sort of like benign racism. You know, I mean, they weren't out screaming, flag toting, torch carrying, but it was just the way, back to Harold, the way they perceived the world.
And it's an inheritance.
Yeah.
Perception is an inheritance.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's a learned, all that. Anyway, but that was Moon Crickets. I should have brought it.
You should have, you're gonna email it to me.
I'm gonna send it to you.
Yes, you are.
There's a conversation that is had in the spaces between the work and each collaboration that is part of what's happening because of the 7x7. And I think that one of the great things about this conversation is the way that that interstitial dialogue can be brought out and actually spoken a little bit. So I really want to thank you guys for your candor in discussing
You're
this.
welcome.
Thank you for giving us space.
I think that there might be some time for a Q&A. So if anyone has any questions about the process or a question directed to any of the artists or writers up here, by all means, please let us know. Or not. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
I have a question.
Oh,
Oh, Bob.
okay, Bob.
My question is.
Could you stand up?
Stand up.
That's my dad.
We've known each other for half a century.
Both of your projects, you took each of your contributions as prompts that you reflected on in one way or another to move the story forward. How do you feel the project would have gone if you would have done something completely unique for the next project, so that it was not so, your response wasn't so associated to the previous piece? Do you think that the audience would have linked what the next contribution?
You
would
talking
be
like a non
with
sequitur
that
or something?
story, as opposed to it being your reflections on the prompts, like yours, Corinne, and yours, Ned. You reflected and you used it as a prompt for yours. What do you think would have happened if you would have thrown something out there that was just completely different? Do you
Like a
think
real
that
cadaver
that
skin.
it could have moved in a healthy way? That was my only.
Good question.
So if the question is, if you were to throw a complete non sequitur instead of kind of responding to the work in the text, work in the text or the drawing.
It kind of seemed to cross purposes to do
Yeah.
that for me.
Yeah.
But
But
that's
also
the way
it's-
I go.
It was part of the rules, if I remember, of the game, then you had to
Yeah,
build.
you had to build on each
build
other.
on each other, so you
But-
were,
I mean, I imagine that it would actually be okay, you
Yeah.
know?
It sort of.
I don't think that
Go
there's
either
any
way.
way that you can screw it up really, because then the next turn will reflect.
It's
what-
like Exquisite Corpse.
Yeah, it'll still be, you know, and somehow an integral work.
actually,
somehow.
I think it would be very interesting to have multiple iterations, like in our case, he started, what if I had started?
Hmm.
That would
We
have
could do it again.
a very different thing, probably.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, I mean, different kind of rules, absolutely.
Yeah.
It can be a very,
It'd be a different thing, but I think that it would be, you know, it would work the same way that other surrealist games often
Yeah.
work, you know?
I think I would say after we got started, we were just communicating by the pieces.
Yeah.
So it's just the piece shows up whole, the piece shows up whole. And it, like anything, you establish the way it's going within the first few.
Yeah.
And so like with Corinne and my piece, it was, we were building this narrative that was somewhat literally building off of each other's work. And so I think if there had been a non sequitur, it would have upset that thing that we were building. That could have been productive, but it also could have been kind of destructive.
But I also think that so much of the process is based on misunderstanding and kind of misinterpreting things, you know,
I'm
already.
French, so dictionary.
But so much of this generative of this creativity, you know, just comes out of like people thinking they know where the story is going and creating something, and then the other person completely misunderstands what that's supposed to be. So it's already a non sequitur in a lot of ways, you know.
Yeah, it can move forward and everybody's going in their own circle,
Yeah,
each individual.
but you're moving forward. you
Yeah,
know?
you're moving forward.
I saw someone raise a hand before.
I feel like we took a different turn. When you started talking about failure, I found it really fascinating. I was like, how does this possibly fail? And it seemed like what the non sequitur thing kind of related to that, but I think we all might be, you know, I was just thinking about improv too, like the yes and.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
In other words, like the non-failure is always actively participating and listening and being part of the yes and then you could say that a non sequitur might not, I don't know. I feel like we're going down. kind of
Yeah, a little.
spirally,
The only true failures that we kind of discussed a few of them initially, but like when the only true failures that occurred where we had to like stop a collaboration was when there was a breach of trust, you know?
Yeah.
A failure of understanding, like,
Well, no, I mean, a failure in the sense that the two participants didn't want to work together, that
Yeah.
it wasn't
Yeah.
safe. Yeah.
It came down to, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, like I don't like what this person is doing. I feel unsafe.
yeah, I
you
mean,
know?
often and again, these are very rare cases, but often what happens is one person says, you know, I have this reasonable concern about what you've done. Would you mind changing it? And the other person is obstinate. And so that's really, when I say like a failure of understanding, you know, it's also kind of like a failure to connect, right? Because it's fine to revise. It's fine to say, I mean, these are, you know, again, kind of isolated cases, because it's not like, I don't like that you put that chair there, right? It's something a little bit more substantive in terms of a concern. But I think often there's also an unknowability, like Jasper and Corinne said, and we don't mandate what degree of communication the collaborators are in. So if they want to write each other long descriptions of why they did what they did, I think very few people do that because they're just trying to get the work done. But mostly they're just receiving these pieces of writing or an art somewhat blankly.
Well, I mean, actually, no, they're not really allowed to elaborate or talk about what they're doing.
Yeah, I thought the exchange was the
They
action.
they can talk about it at the end, you know,
If they're rule followers.
if they're rule followers.
Yeah.
But we have some people that like to break the rules, but
Let's break
Um,
rules.
but yeah, what's a rule anyway? Anybody else have anything that they want to?
How did you arrive at like the number of rotations?
It just seemed like 3 was too few and 10, you know, I mean, it just seemed like a round kind of number that wasn't, it felt like to do more than 7 would be, it would start to feel a little onerous, you know?
It's already a 2 weeks long
It's already 2 weeks
project.
long. So,
Totally dedicated.
No sleep.
I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, you have to accept the challenge.
yeah,
You want to play the game?
yeah,
If you
But
do,
it
then
seemed
you
like-
got 14 days of work.
yeah. 7 seemed like enough, you know, and so that's kind of why we decided to do 7 as opposed to, you know, more than that.
We also had a secret vendetta against the San Francisco lifestyle publication 7 by 7. And
Oh,
so
right.
we just wanted to like mess up their SEO as bad as we could.
That's fair. That's honest.
It goes back generations.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that length of time, the fortnight, is a pretty magical length of time. It's like half a moon. It's a fortnight. And like, I think also just when you signed up for it, to feel like you kind of made this commitment, like you were saying that, like for myself, partway through, I fell ill and like had a horrible fever, which may have like influenced the writing of the piece. But I just like, I would rally for like more than 2 hours, and like try and make sense of Corinne's illustration and like write something that worked.
Yeah, no, it's really like a blind date, you
Yeah.
know, online. And you have to react pretty quickly. It's very, very intense.
Maybe we'll take one more question. Anybody? Or not? Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Lisa, thank you. Axel, Karine, Jasper, Ned, Ashaki. Round of applause again for everybody. Thank you all for coming. Just a couple more things. We will have the closing of the 7x7 show on May 7th. We'll have some more readings in tandem with that. Please do come back. As we've mentioned a few times, we have a collection of the writing and the art 7x7 for sale in the bookstores, as well as Ashaki's chapbook Surveillance. Feel free to stick around for a while, have some wine, look at the show, talk, and thank you all for coming. It's been a pleasure.